You ever hear someone laugh at you through a phone line? Not just laugh, but laugh like you're a goddamn joke? Like your loyalty, your sacrifices, your quiet forgiveness are all some pathetic comedy routine they pass around between bedsheets and borrowed motel pillows? That was me. Friday night, 9:17 p.m. I was standing in the kitchen, bare feet on cold tile, phone pressed to my ear, and I could hear the creak of the mattress on the other end. I knew that sound, knew the beat of it, the way it once used to rise and fall beneath us. But tonight, it was her and him, and the only sound I was making was the slow cracking of my composure. She picked up, breathless. "Hey," she said like I was a wrong number. "Where are you?" A pause. "The store," she lied. "Getting wine." I needed a minute to think. That was her default setting: distance, deception, deflection. I could hear him in the background, something low and mumbled, and then her muffled response. Then silence. I waited. "I'll be home soon," she said, brushing me off like lint. "We'll talk. I'll make everything right. I promise." That should have been the end of it. Should have hung up. Waited like a good, obedient husband. The one she thought I was. But I heard it, just as she thought the line had gone dead. "He's like an old dog," she said, voice thick with amusement. "He feeds on excuses and waits for me at the door." And then came the laughter. Hers. His. That dry, smug kind of laughter people use when they think they've won. I stood there for a minute. Still. Phone still in hand. Heart doing something between breaking and hardening. I wasn't angry, not yet. That would come later. Right now, I was clear. I opened the closet, moved the coats aside, and unlocked the small safe she never even bothered asking about. She didn't know about the Magnum inside. Didn't care. Just like she didn't care to remember the man I used to be before I became hers. She didn't even pick somewhere decent. That stung in a different way. Not the affair, no, I could almost understand that. But this? Bringing him to a place where the bedsheets smelled like bleach and defeat? That was a special kind of cruelty. I knew where they were because she had left the motel rewards card in the glove compartment 3 weeks ago. Room 206. I remembered because it was the same day she said she was at a spa with her sister. God bless GPS history. I didn't go in loud. No shouting. No sirens. Just walked in. Kicked the door open. The Magnum was already raised. He scrambled like a rat, naked, pale, tripping over his own belt. She screamed and pulled a sheet over herself, like that would erase what she'd done. "Get up," I said. My voice was calm. That scared them more than if I'd screamed. "Let's go outside," I said to him. Just the two of us. I didn't take him outside. I took him to the bathroom. Tiled floor. No windows. Just a narrow strip of flickering light over the mirror where he could see himself fall apart. "You know who I am?" I asked. He nodded. The kind of nod a coward gives when he's not sure if agreeing will save him or seal his fate. "I'm the old dog," I said. "You remember that." He didn't speak. Just stood there, cornered, half-dressed and shaking, stinking of motel soap and betrayal. I didn't shoot him. Didn't lay a hand on him. I leaned in close. Close enough for him to smell the sweat and steel and regret on me. "You ever speak to her again," I whispered, "I'll bury you in a silence so deep you'll pray for screams." And then I left. When I stepped back into the room, it was quiet. She was gone. Window open. Sheet on the floor. Gone. But on the bed was something I didn't expect, a second phone. Not hers. Not mine. His. Unlocked. Dumb bastard. And inside? Photos. Not just of her and him, but her and 2 others. Dates. Times. Locations. Some were from months ago. Others. Last week. And one name kept popping up. Brandon. My brother. That was when the real nightmare began. You ever hear your world crack without a sound? Because that's what it felt like, scrolling through that phone. Every swipe was a hammer to the spine, each image a betrayal I hadn't prepared for. Not just the affair, no. That would have almost been bearable. This? This was organized. Sustained. She wasn't cheating. She was operating. His name was Brandon. My younger brother. My only brother. We weren't close, but we weren't strangers either. He showed up at birthdays, cookouts, gave my wife those awkward hugs that lasted a hair too long. I'd noticed, but I always told myself it's just family. That's the thing about betrayal, it doesn't hide. You just get good at ignoring it. Until it finally spits in your face. I sat there on the edge of that stained motel bed, holding the phone like it was a live grenade. Her voice played in my head again. "He's like an old dog. He feeds on excuses and waits for me at the door." My hand shook, but not from fear. Not from grief. From clarity. The kind that sets in after denial burns off like fog under the morning sun. The texts weren't just dirty. They were coordinated. She'd been keeping a calendar. Meetups. Alibis. Disguises. One stood out: Brandon will cover for me while I'm visiting Mom. And he had. More than once. He'd smiled at me, eaten my food, patted my back, and told me I deserved better. Guess he thought he qualified. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove to the one place left that hadn't been contaminated by her scent, my father's old fishing cabin, about 40 minutes outside town. It was barely livable, but it had a roof, 4 walls, and no memories of her. Just the creak of weathered floorboards and the quiet hum of what was left of my dignity. I spread the 2 phones out on the dusty kitchen table, hers and his. Charge both. Read everything. Brandon wasn't the only one. Turns out she liked variety. 2 coworkers. A bartender she met on a girls' trip. And Brandon, well, he was the one she went back to when the others didn't make her feel enough. She said that in a message. Brandon's different. He feels dangerous, but safe. You know? Like, if I had to pick someone to ruin my life with, it'd be him. That line? That one stuck. Not because of the pain. No, that had settled into something colder by now. It stuck because it showed me what she really wanted. Not love. Not partnership. Just power. And power is something I understand. You see, before all this, I was a systems analyst. I spent 10 years designing security protocols for private firms. That meant I knew how to monitor, record, track, and store data in ways most people couldn't even spell. She forgot that part of me. She only remembered the apron-wearing version, the guy who made her coffee just the way she liked it, the guy who folded laundry while she worked late for hours that never added up. She forgot what I used to be. But I hadn't. That night in the cabin, I backed up both phones. Every photo. Every message. I used a forensic tool I built years ago to recover deleted files. Found even more. Audio clips. Screenshots. It was all there. I didn't want revenge, not yet. I wanted documentation. Because the thing about people like her? They rewrite history. And I wasn't about to let her do that. The next morning, I showed up at my mother's house. Brandon was there, like always, sitting in the same damn chair he'd sat in since we were kids, watching sports with one leg over the other like he owned the room. He smiled when he saw me. Look who finally came up for air. I handed him the phone. His phone. He blinked. What's this? You tell me, I said. Or better yet, tell Mom. Mom looked up from her knitting, confused. I didn't wait. I tapped the screen. Opened the message with the photo. Brandon. Shirtless. Lying next to my wife. His hand on the curve of her hip. Her laugh frozen mid-smirk. Silence dropped into the room like a live grenade. My mother gasped. Brandon, what the hell is this? He stammered. It's not what it looks like. Really? I said. Because to me, it looks exactly like you screwing your brother's wife while pretending to be a decent human being. My voice didn't rise. That's the trick with rage. You don't shout it. You pour it. I'm not going to hit you, I said. Not going to scream. Not going to cry. But you need to understand this. This was your line in the sand. He opened his mouth. I raised a hand to stop him. You've got 48 hours to tell her it's over. Tell her it's over. No more secret messages. No more motel meetups. Or the whole family gets a front row seat to everything on that phone. And if I don't, he sneered. I smiled. Then I make sure the only thing people remember about Brandon Jacobs is the sound of a door slamming shut. Brandon didn't respond right away. He just sat there, staring at the screen like maybe if he blinked hard enough, the images would vanish. Like reality was some fever dream he could sweat out. But reality doesn't care about your comfort, it just is. And the truth, when it finally walks into the room, doesn't knock. I left my mother's house without another word. Brandon was already a dead man in my world. He just hadn't felt the cold yet. I pulled into the driveway around noon. Her car was already there, neat, clean, still with that ridiculous girl boss decal she bought after watching one too many empowerment podcasts hosted by women who'd never been loyal to anything but their own reflection. She was in the kitchen, like nothing had happened. Hair up. Phone in hand. Almond milk on the counter. Hey, babe, she said casually. Like I hadn't walked into a motel room 2 nights ago with a loaded gun and a heart half caved in. I stood in the doorway. Just looked at her. She glanced up, caught my expression. Her smile faltered just enough to make me savor the moment. Good, she asked, cocking her head like a confused house cat. You ever hear of a man named Tyler Jones? I asked, stepping into the room. That hit her. Not hard, but enough. Her eyes twitched. Hands slowed. Tyler? Why would you ask that? You said his name, I replied. Drunk. At the bar. For drinks deep. Right before you passed out and drooled all over the passenger seat. Said you slept with him. That was months ago. She snapped too quickly, then blinked, realizing what she'd just given up. I didn't mean that. I don't even remember saying that. I walked past her. Opened the fridge. Poured myself a glass of water. Cold. Clean. Unlike her. Funny, I said. Because I found a phone in the motel room. The one you left behind. And he wasn't the only name in there. The blood drained from her face. Just like that. She didn't ask what phone. Didn't ask what motel. Didn't say, this isn't what it looks like. Didn't even cry. She just stood there. Cold. Like a snake caught in a beam of sunlight, still, but calculating. You went through my stuff, she said finally, low and slow. I laughed. God, it felt good to finally laugh, really laugh. You cheated on me with my brother, I said, sipping the water. And your concern is privacy? She crossed her arms. A silent defensive stance. But her eyes were scanning me for weaknesses, tells, vulnerabilities. That's when I realized she wasn't afraid of being caught. She was afraid I might finally stop playing the fool. So I gave her what she feared. Here's how this goes, I said, voice steady. We pretend everything's fine. No screaming. No police. No public humiliation. You get to keep your shiny image, your friends, your Pilates class. I keep the house, the car, and the money in our joint account. She blinked. You want a divorce? No, I replied. You want one. I just want closure. Why not just leave? She asked. Why not take the high road, walk away? Because, I said, leaning in close, you don't get to drag me through hell and walk away with a tan and a fresh start. She didn't respond. Couldn't. Because deep down, she knew I wasn't bluffing. And worse, I was calm. That night, I finished uploading everything to an encrypted drive. A little something I like to call a digital coffin, locked, timed, and rigged to send automatically to her parents, her boss, and a few choice Facebook groups if the file isn't disabled weekly. Every photo, every message, every moan and whimper she thought was lost to the digital void. I backed it up 5 times. Different locations, different names. Redundancy is how you stay ahead of someone used to lying with a straight face. 2 days later, we hosted her parents for dinner. Roast chicken, wine, polite laughter. She played the part of the devoted wife. I played the part of the quiet husband. Her dad, an insurance adjuster with zero imagination, said, "You two seem happy. It's good to see couples that last." She smiled. We've had our ups and downs, but yes, we're solid. I raised my glass and nodded. Solid as a loaded gun in a motel drawer. She choked on her wine. I didn't blink. I wasn't just going to leave. That would be too clean. Too easy. She didn't marry a weak man. She married a patient one. And patient men? We don't just react. We design the fall. You ever sit across from someone and realize you're looking at a ghost? That's what she was to me now. Skin, teeth, hair, makeup. A perfectly crafted illusion sitting at my kitchen table, sipping coffee like she hadn't set fire to everything we ever built. But the fire wasn't mine to feel anymore. It was hers. She just didn't know it yet. I stirred my coffee slowly, methodically, while she scrolled through her phone, pretending life was normal. Fake normal. Surface normal. She was laughing at memes. Meanwhile, I was burying the evidence of her entire existence, one document at a time. The beauty of it all? She still thought she had time. Time to spin a new lie. Time to recover, to pivot, to gaslight me into believing that maybe I was overreacting. Maybe this wasn't cheating. Maybe we were broken before she ever crossed the line. But I wasn't playing that game anymore. While she posted selfies with inspirational quotes about growth and healing, I spent hours tightening every loose bolt in the trap I'd set. Bank accounts? Closed and reopened in my name only. Joint credit cards? Maxed them out on gift cards and cashed them quietly through side accounts. House deed? Already legally transferred into my sole ownership 6 months ago, because when you're married to someone who constantly hints at financial independence, you get smart early. She just never thought I'd use it. The first public cut was small, almost invisible. I canceled the couple's weekend she had planned with her friends, sent polite apologies on her behalf, claimed food poisoning, refunded only my half of the payment, left her stuck explaining the mess. The rage in her eyes when she found out? Beautiful. Like watching a queen realize the peasants had moved the borders without asking permission. But that was just the appetizer. Brandon, the brother who thought betrayal was a game of chance. I made sure his boss found out about his extracurricular activities on company time, complete with screenshots of him sexting my wife during working hours. Funny thing about corporate jobs, they love loyalty almost as much as they love scandal. Brandon's career? Dead on arrival. Fired with cause. No severance. No reference. When Mom called me sobbing about how I'd ruined Brandon's future, I just said, "Actions have consequences, Ma. Maybe you should have raised better sons." And hung up. By the time the first week passed, she started noticing the cracks. Little things. Like how our friends stopped responding to her texts. Like how her Instagram followers mysteriously dropped by a few hundred overnight. She couldn't figure it out yet. Couldn't see that every thread of her life was being pulled loose by invisible hands. She'd walk around the house with her phone in a death grip, thumb scrolling furiously, panic bleeding into her posture. Meanwhile, I'd whistle while making coffee, smile while doing dishes. I was rebuilding. She was unraveling. Day 10. She cornered me in the kitchen, eyes red, mascara smudged, breathing hard like a runner who'd realized the finish line was a mile farther than she thought. "What's happening?" she hissed. I smiled. God, I smiled so wide it must have looked insane. "What do you mean?" I asked sweetly. "People are blocking me, unfriending me. My work thinks I lied about personal leave." I shrugged. "Maybe it's karma." She stepped closer. "Did you do this?" "No, sweetheart," I said, tilting my head. "You did." She stared at me. For the first time in our marriage, she truly saw me. Not the old dog. Not the doormat. Not the man at the door with a leash around his heart. Me. The man with nothing left to lose and every ounce of patience to win. I reached into my back pocket, pulled out a small envelope, and handed it to her. Inside, divorce papers. Signed. Stamped. Finalized. Dated 2 weeks ago, the day after I found her in that motel. "I don't understand," she whispered, voice cracking. "You didn't just lose me," I said quietly. "You lost everything you thought you could steal." She looked up at me, tears brimming, and for a brief, pathetic moment, she reached out, as if maybe she could claw her way back into my life by sheer habit. I stepped back. "You remember what you said about me?" I asked. She swallowed. Said nothing. Old dogs wait at the door. I leaned in close enough for her to smell the new freedom blooming in my chest. This old dog learned to bite. There's a silence that comes after devastation. It isn't peaceful. It's surgical, like the air itself is waiting for the final breath before it starts rebuilding. That's what my house felt like now. Her clothes still hung in the closet. Shoes lined neatly by the door. Makeup by the mirror. All the props were still in place. But the actress had been fired. She was still technically living here, though. Had no choice. Her friends weren't returning calls, and her family? Even they had started to back away once I'd shared a few truths. A little nudge to her sister, a well-timed forward to her cousin, and suddenly the support circle started shrinking faster than ice and bourbon. She was boxed in, and I made damn sure the walls whispered every night. I found her one morning sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. No sugar, just hot water and leaves. Fitting. She looked up, bleary-eyed, like she hadn't slept. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For everything." I sat down across from her. Calm. "I'm not." That threw her. "I'm not sorry," I said again. "Because I needed to see what you were. What you're capable of." I made a mistake. "No," I cut her off. "You made a choice." Repeatedly. And with a level of organization that would impress the Pentagon. She flinched. "Good. You don't love me anymore," she said quietly. "I don't hate you either," I replied. "And honestly, that might be worse." She moved out 2 days later. Tried to be dramatic about it. Dragged the suitcase slowly across the tile like we were in some sad indie movie. I didn't stop her. Didn't help. Didn't say goodbye. Instead, I walked into the bedroom and started changing the locks before her car was out of the driveway. She'd come crawling back once. She wouldn't get the chance again. Now, about Brandon. He still hadn't reached out. Not after the job loss. Not after our mother cut him off out of sheer embarrassment. Not after mutual friends started ghosting him like a bad investment. So I paid him a visit. Found him at a rundown gym in a strip mall off 42nd. He was spotting some red-faced kid doing dumbbell curls when I walked in. He froze. "Don't worry," I said, hands in my pockets. "I'm not here to hit you." "What do you want?" He asked, voice low, throat tight. To see how far you've fallen, I replied. And to tell you the best part. He frowned. I leaned in, just enough. You were never even her favorite. You were just the one closest when she needed to feel powerful again. He blinked. She told someone that, I added. Not me. One of the others. Yeah, there were others, Brandon. You weren't special. Just convenient. He didn't say anything. Just stood there, shoulders sagging under the weight of something no protein shake would fix. I walked away. The days that followed were quiet, but they weren't empty. I rediscovered music. Started running again. Bought a motorcycle I'd always told myself was too dangerous for married life. Most importantly, I started to remember the man I was before I became a cautionary tale. I moved her remaining things into boxes and taped them shut. Didn't label them. When she finally sent someone to pick them up, I left the boxes on the curb, right next to the trash bins. Not in the trash. I still had class, but close enough to remind her. She left me a letter once. Slipped it under the door. One of those, I'll always love you / I lost myself / I was scared confessionals. I didn't open it. Burned it in the backyard fire pit with the last of our wedding photos. Watched the edges curl, then blacken, then vanish into nothing. I had already read the only part that mattered. He's like an old dog. He feeds on excuses and waits for me at the door. Not anymore. Now I bite. Now I build. And this time, I'm the only one with a key. There's an old saying my grandfather used to mumble after a few too many beers. If you burn the bridge while you're still standing on it, don't expect a safe landing. Funny how some lessons don't hit you until you're watching someone else freefall. Because that's what it looked like now, her life, spinning like a drunk figure skater, except there was no applause at the end. Just hard ice and broken bones. And the best part? I didn't have to lift a finger. I just watched. It started small. One of her good friends, someone she used to whisper with behind fake smiles at barbecues, got a whiff of the real story. Not because I told them directly, no. I didn't have to. All it took was a misplaced Dropbox link, accidentally sent to a few mutual contacts. A link containing screenshots, photos, dates, texts. Enough evidence to turn every brunch buddy and Instagram admirer into a silent jury. By the time Monday rolled around, she was socially radioactive. The it girl became the it girl. Blocked, unfollowed, uninvited. You know what corporate America loves even less than bad press? Embarrassment. She worked in PR, for crying out loud. Image was everything. And here she was, the star of her own scandal. Her boss, a real sleaze who'd always treated the women in the office like mannequins, called her in for a chat. Translation. We appreciate all you've done, but we have to let you go in order to preserve the brand. In other words, you're not good for the bottom line anymore. Fired. Publicly? She claimed she was pursuing new opportunities. Privately? She packed her things into a cardboard box while people stared at her like she was a ghost walking through her own funeral. Brandon wasn't faring much better. Turns out when you lose your job and your girlfriend at the same time, you start unraveling faster than a bargain bin sweater. Word got around. Drunk texts to exes. Bar fights. Couch surfing. I heard he tried moving back in with mom for a while, only to find she had changed the locks and replaced his old room with a treadmill and a sewing machine. Poetic justice. The golden boy turned into a cautionary tale. One night, about a month after the final detonation, I got a text. Unknown number. No words. Just a photo. It was her. Sitting on the curb outside some coffee shop, mascara smudged, hair a mess, clutching a cracked phone like it was the last thing tethering her to the planet. I stared at it for a long time. Was it supposed to make me feel something? Pity? Nostalgia? Regret? I felt none of it. Not anymore. I deleted the message without replying. A mutual friend was getting married that summer. Big deal. Country club wedding. Guest list a mile long. And guess who RSVP'd solo? Not me. Her. Rumor had it she showed up in a dress a size too small, forced smiles at people who wouldn't meet her eyes, laughed too loudly at jokes she didn't understand. When she tried to corner old friends, plead her case, offer excuses, they smiled politely and walked away. She spent most of the night nursing a drink at the bar, watching the dance floor from a distance she could no longer cross. I didn't go. Didn't need to. Some battles you win just by staying gone. The house was different now. Clean. Quiet. Mine. I repainted the walls, no more beige, no more soft pastel she picked out to impress her friends. Dark, rich colors now. Solid. Real. I ripped up the garden she planted. built a fire pit instead. Some nights I sit there alone with a cold drink, letting the smoke curl up into the black sky like a prayer for the dead things I've buried.